I knew my marriage was in trouble the moment my mother-in-law laughed at my dress. It was Thanksgiving. Everyone was sitting around the table. My husband, Michael, was beside me. His parents were across from us. His younger sister, Jennifer, sat next to their grandmother. And I was trying very hard not to cry. Linda, my mother-in-law, looked me up and down. Then she smiled. "Sarah, that's an interesting choice." I knew exactly what she meant. My dress was simple. Black. Elegant. Nothing expensive. I had bought it on sale because Michael and I were trying to save money. Linda wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Jennifer laughed. "Mom, don't be mean." Then she looked at me. "But honestly, Sarah, you could have tried harder." Michael lowered his eyes. He said nothing. I forced a smile. "I like it." Linda raised her glass. "Of course you do." Everyone laughed. Except Grandma. Her name was Eleanor. She was 81. And she had been unusually quiet all evening. I didn't know it then. But she was watching everything. And before that dinner ended, she would make a decision that changed all of our lives. I'd been married to Michael for 7 years. We met at a coffee shop. He was funny, kind, ambitious. At least, that's who I thought he was. His family was wealthy. Very wealthy. They owned several commercial properties and a successful construction company. I came from a completely different background. My father was a mechanic. My mother worked at a school. We didn't have much. But we were happy. Michael always told me that his family didn't matter. "We're building our own life," he'd say. I believed him. After we got married, things changed slowly. His parents started making comments. My job wasn't impressive enough. My clothes weren't expensive enough. My apartment wasn't in the right neighborhood. Even the way I cooked became a subject of criticism. Michael always had the same response. "Just ignore them." So I did. For years. I ignored the insults. I ignored the jokes. I ignored the looks. I ignored the way his mother would compliment every woman in the room except me. But ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. It only teaches people that they can keep doing it. The Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be different. Michael had promised me no drama this year. I smiled. "Your mother says that every year." He laughed. "She'll behave." She didn't. Before dinner, Linda walked into the kitchen while I was preparing dessert. She looked at the pie. "What is that?" "Apple pie. Did you make it?" "Yes." She touched the edge of the crust. "You know, Eleanor prefers the one from the bakery downtown." I looked at her. "I can buy one." "No." She smiled. "Leave it." Then she walked away. I stood there holding the pie plate. I wanted to go home. But I stayed. Because Michael asked me to. Because I still believed our marriage mattered more than his family's approval. At dinner, things got worse. Jennifer started talking about a vacation. She had just returned from Italy. Then she asked me, "Sarah, where did you say you went for your honeymoon?" "Chicago." She laughed. "Oh, one word. That was all." But everyone understood. After dinner, Michael's father, Robert, started talking about family business. He asked Michael whether he was ready to take over one of the companies. Michael said he didn't know. Robert looked disappointed. Then he looked at me. Maybe he needs fewer distractions. The room went quiet. I looked at Michael. He stared at his plate. I said, "Are you calling me a distraction?" Robert smiled. "Don't be sensitive." Linda laughed. Jennifer joined her. Then Grandma Eleanor placed her fork down. The sound was small, but everyone stopped. She looked at Robert. "Was that necessary?" He shrugged. "We're joking." "No." Her voice was calm. "You're not." Linda shifted in her chair. "Mom, please." Eleanor looked at her. "I've been listening all evening." Nobody spoke. Then she looked directly at me. "Sarah, would you come sit beside me?" I moved my chair. She took my hand. And then she said something that made the entire table freeze. "I owe you an apology." I had no idea what she meant. Grandma Eleanor looked around the table. "I have watched this family become cruel." Linda's face went pale. "Mom." "No." Eleanor held up her hand. "You've had years to behave better." Robert looked uncomfortable. "Mother, this isn't the time." It is exactly the time. She turned toward me. Sarah, you have been treated like an outsider in this family. I swallowed. She continued. And I allowed it. I shook my head. You didn't do anything. I did. She looked at Michael. And so did you. Michael finally looked up. His face was red. Grandma, I love Sarah. Then why did you let them humiliate her? He had no answer. Nobody did. Eleanor reached into her purse. She removed a small envelope. Then she placed it on the table. I was waiting for the right moment. Linda stared at it. What is that? Eleanor smiled. My updated estate plan. The room went silent. I felt Michael's hand move away from mine. I didn't understand. Then Eleanor said, and Sarah is the reason I changed it. I immediately shook my head. No. Everyone looked at me. I said, I don't want anything. Eleanor smiled. I know. Linda stood up. You changed your will? Yes. Because of her? Because of what I have seen. Linda's voice became sharper. Mom, you cannot be serious. Eleanor looked at her. I am completely serious. Robert asked, what exactly did you change? Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me. Sarah, do you remember when I asked you to help me organize my medical records last year? Yes. You thought it was because I was confused. I nodded. I wasn't confused. She paused. I was testing you. My stomach tightened. Testing me? Yes. She explained that she had deliberately asked different family members for help. Some ignored her. Some demanded money. Some complained. I had simply helped. No questions. No expectations. No complaints. She had noticed. Eleanor told us she had spent years watching the family. She knew who visited her. She knew who called. She knew who asked about money. She knew who pretended to care. Then she looked at Linda. You came to my house 6 times this year. Linda crossed her arms. So, 5 times you asked about my investments. Linda's face changed. Robert looked at her. Did you? That isn't important. Eleanor smiled sadly. It is. Then she looked at Jennifer. You asked me twice to pay off your credit cards. Jennifer stared at the table. And Robert. Eleanor shook her head. You asked me to put your company in my trust. Robert looked angry. I was protecting the family. No. Eleanor's voice became firm. You were protecting yourself. Then she looked at Michael. He looked terrified. You never asked me for money, she said. Michael seemed relieved. Then she added, but you never stood up for your wife. His relief disappeared. Eleanor turned toward me. You were the only one who asked me what I wanted. I didn't know what to say. She squeezed my hand. That is why I changed everything. After dinner, Eleanor asked me to stay behind. Everyone else left the dining room. Michael stood near the doorway. Can I talk to you? I looked at him. Not tonight. He nodded. Eleanor waited until he left. Then she handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. It said she had changed her estate plan. But the most important part wasn't the money. It was her explanation. She wrote that she had watched me take care of Michael during the hardest years of his career. She had watched me help him when he failed. She had watched me refuse to ask his family for financial help. She had watched me stay respectful even when they weren't. Then she wrote something that made me cry. You never tried to earn my inheritance. That is exactly why I want you to have it. I folded the letter. I can't accept this. Eleanor shook her head. You don't have to decide tonight. Then she looked toward the hallway. Sarah, there is something else you need to know. What? Your husband has been keeping something from you. My heart stopped. What? She sighed. Ask him about the house. I found Michael in the garage. He was standing beside his car. I asked, what house? He looked at me. What? Grandma told me to ask you. He went pale. Sarah, I can explain. That sentence told me everything. I crossed my arms. Explain. He sat down. Then he told me the truth. His parents had offered him a house 2 years earlier. Not as a gift. As an investment. The house was worth nearly $600,000. Michael had been supposed to renovate it and sell it. Instead, he had secretly sold another property and used the money to pay off personal debts. Then he told his parents he was still renovating. They didn't know. I stared at him. How much do you owe? He looked away. About $140,000. My stomach dropped. You lied to me. I was going to fix it. For 2 years. I was embarrassed. I shook my head. You weren't embarrassed. He looked at me. You were afraid. He said nothing. I continued. You were afraid your family would find out. He nodded. And you let them blame me for your failures. His eyes filled with tears. I never wanted that. But you allowed it. He whispered. Yes. That night, I slept in the guest room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stared at the ceiling. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of believing my husband would protect me. And he hadn't. The next morning, Michael asked me to talk. I agreed. He apologized. Then he made a mistake. He said, if Grandma gives you the inheritance, maybe we can use it to fix everything. I looked at him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? He realized what he'd said. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Sarah. No. I stood up. You still don't understand. He looked confused. I said, this isn't about money. Then what is it about? Respect. He stared at me. I don't need your family's money. I need my husband to stand beside me when his family attacks me. He lowered his head. I know. No. I shook my head. You know now. There was a difference. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Eleanor's attorney finalized the estate documents. She left most of her assets to charity. She gave specific amounts to several family members. But the largest private asset went to me. A trust. Protected. Separate. Untouchable by Michael. Eleanor had insisted on that. When Linda learned about it, she exploded. You're giving her millions? Eleanor replied calmly. I'm giving her what I choose. She'll destroy this family. No. Eleanor looked at her daughter. You already did that. Robert threatened to challenge the trust. Eleanor's attorney warned him that the documents were airtight. Jennifer stopped speaking to Grandma. Michael was caught between his parents and me. For the first time in our marriage, he had to make a decision. Not about money. About loyalty. He came home one evening. He stood in the doorway. I chose you. I looked at him. Did you? Yes. Then prove it. He nodded. What do you want me to do? I answered. Tell your family the truth. The next Sunday, Michael invited his parents over. I didn't want to be there. But he asked me to stay. They sat across from us. Michael took a breath. I owe you an apology. Robert looked confused. For what? For letting you blame Sarah. Linda looked at me. Blame her for what? Michael told them everything. The debt. The property. The lies. The fact that Sarah had nothing to do with his financial problems. He admitted that he had allowed them to believe she was the reason he wasn't succeeding. Linda stared at him. You're humiliating us. Michael shook his head. No. Then he looked at me. I humiliated Sarah. Silence. Robert stood. You're throwing away your family. Michael answered. No. He took my hand. I'm finally protecting my marriage. Linda began to cry. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then she said, this is her fault. Michael didn't move. He simply said, no, Mom. That was the first time he had ever said it. And I knew something had changed. The following year was difficult. Michael and I went to counseling. We worked through years of resentment. It wasn't easy. Some days I wondered whether love was enough. Other days, I could see the man I had married returning. He sold the car he'd bought to impress his parents. He paid his debts. He stopped accepting financial help from his family. Most importantly, he learned to speak up. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Simply clearly. When his mother made a cruel comment, he corrected her. When his father criticized me, he ended the conversation. When Jennifer tried to involve herself in our marriage, he told her it wasn't her business. Slowly, things improved. But Eleanor became sick. Her health declined quickly. One afternoon, she asked me to visit. I sat beside her bed. She looked at me. Are you happy? I smiled. I'm trying. She laughed softly. That counts. I held her hand. She said, "Don't stay with Michael because of what I gave you." "I won't." "And don't leave him because of what my family did." I looked at her. "What should I do?" She smiled. "Choose the life that gives you peace." Eleanor died 3 months later. Her funeral was small. I sat beside Michael. Linda sat across the aisle. We didn't speak. After the service, everyone gathered outside. Linda approached me. For a moment, I thought she was going to insult me again. Instead, she said, "She loved you." I nodded. I loved her too. Linda looked away. Then she whispered, "I don't understand why she chose you." I answered honestly. "She didn't choose me instead of you." Linda looked at me. "She chose what she believed was right." That seemed to hurt more than anything I could have said. She walked away. Michael put his hand on my shoulder. I looked at him. "You okay?" I nodded. "No." He smiled sadly. "Me neither." We stood there together. For the first time, I realized grief had erased the competition. There was nothing left to win. Eleanor was gone, and none of us could impress her anymore. A few weeks later, I received a final letter from Eleanor. It had been written before her death. She wrote, "Sarah, if you're reading this, then I am gone. I hope you're not fighting anymore. I hope you've learned that money can expose people, but it cannot create character. I did not leave you my assets because I thought you were perfect. I left them to you because you treated me like a person instead of an opportunity. Never let the money change that. Use it to build something meaningful. Protect yourself. Help people when you can. And remember one thing. You don't owe anyone access to your life because they share your blood." I cried for a long time. Then I put the letter beside Mom's old photograph. Two women had taught me the same lesson in completely different ways. My mother taught me that family matters. Eleanor taught me that boundaries matter too. And I finally understood that both could be true. I didn't use the inheritance to buy a bigger house. I didn't buy a luxury car. I didn't start showing off. Instead, I paid off our remaining debts. Then I opened a small community center in memory of Eleanor. It helped women who were trying to rebuild their lives after financial abuse or family betrayal. Michael helped me run it. At first, his family criticized us. Then they stopped. Eventually, even Robert donated materials. He never apologized directly. But I accepted the gesture. Jennifer visited once. She looked around. "This is what Grandma wanted?" I smiled. "Yes." Jennifer nodded. "I think she'd like it." That was all she said. It was enough. The center grew. People came. Stories were shared. Lives changed. And every time someone thanked me, I remembered Eleanor's words. Money can expose people. It cannot create character. 5 years after that Thanksgiving, Michael and I renewed our vows. It wasn't a huge ceremony. No expensive venue. No giant guest list. Just close friends. My parents. A few people from the community center. And Michael's family. Linda came. She sat quietly. After the ceremony, she approached me. She held out a small box. Inside was Eleanor's old bracelet. "I found this after she died," Linda said. "She wanted you to have it." I looked at her. "Why didn't you give it to me before?" She swallowed. "Because I was angry." I nodded. "I'm not anymore." She looked at me. "I know." Then she hugged me. It wasn't a perfect hug. It was awkward. Brief. But real. When she stepped away, she said, "I was wrong about you." I smiled. "So was I." She looked surprised. I continued. "I thought you would never change." She smiled through her tears. "Maybe we both changed." I still think about that Thanksgiving dinner. The dress. The jokes. Michael looking at his plate. Linda laughing. Jennifer smiling. And Grandma Eleanor putting down her fork. If she hadn't done that, maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe I would have kept swallowing insults. Maybe Michael would have kept hiding his debts. Maybe his family would have kept treating me like an outsider. But Eleanor had seen something I hadn't. She saw that I was disappearing inside a family that expected me to stay quiet. Her inheritance didn't save me. Her honesty did. The money simply gave me the freedom to make choices without fear. And that was the greatest gift she could have given me. Today, I don't think of the inheritance as revenge. It was never about making them lose. It was about making sure I didn't lose myself. There is one lesson I carry with me. Never confuse silence with peace. For years, I stayed quiet because I wanted peace. But there was no peace. There was only my silence. Real peace came later. It came when I told the truth. When Michael admitted his mistakes. When his family had to face their behavior. When I stopped trying to earn their approval. And when I finally understood that being loved by someone doesn't mean you have to accept being mistreated by everyone around them. Family should be a place where you can breathe. Not a place where you constantly prove that you deserve to belong. Eleanor understood that. She didn't give me her inheritance because I was special. She gave it to me because she saw that I didn't need it to know my worth. And perhaps that is why it changed everything. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret staying with Michael. I don't. But I also don't pretend it was easy. He had to become a different husband. And I had to become a different wife. I stopped making excuses for him. He stopped making excuses for his family. We learned how to disagree without destroying each other. We learned how to set boundaries. We learned that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to carry the anger forever. Today, Michael still keeps a photograph of Eleanor on his desk. So do I. Sometimes we talk about her. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we miss her. And sometimes I imagine what she would say if she could see us now. She would probably smile. Then she would tell us to stop being so serious. And she'd probably ask whether we finally learned how to make her favorite pie. We still haven't. But we keep trying. I never wore that black dress again. Not because I hated it. Because I no longer needed to remember the woman who sat silently at that table. The woman who accepted humiliation because she thought keeping everyone happy was the same thing as keeping a family together. I became someone else. Someone who speaks. Someone who asks questions. Someone who walks away when respect disappears. Someone who knows that kindness without boundaries can become self-destruction. That Thanksgiving changed my life. My husband's family thought they were humiliating me. They thought I was the poor outsider sitting at their expensive table. They had no idea Grandma Eleanor had already made her decision. She had watched. She had listened. She had remembered. And when the moment came, she didn't scream. She simply stood up and told the truth. The last time I visited Eleanor's grave, I brought flowers. I stood there alone. I told her about the community center, about Michael, about Linda, about everything that had changed. Then I said, "You were right." The wind moved through the trees. I smiled. "You really did know everything." I placed the flowers beside her stone. Then I walked away. I didn't feel like the woman who had been humiliated at Thanksgiving anymore. I didn't feel like the outsider. I didn't feel like the poor wife who didn't belong. I felt like myself. And that's what Eleanor gave me. Not millions. Not property. Not revenge. She gave me permission to stop begging people to value me. She showed me that sometimes the greatest justice isn't watching someone else lose. It's watching yourself finally win. Not over them. Over the version of yourself that was afraid to stand up. And that was the real inheritance.